taking their 10% commission for holding the money or what have you, and they're all betting on how high they think Mo will climb up the ships before she dove off. Cleaned up for a few weeks doing that before the Admirals put a stop to it, so free spirit to say the least, or probably what we would call now a bit of an adrenaline junkie. And then a handsome chap named Johnny Best. He was a local celebrity in the city at the time in his own right, famous boxing promoter of the era, and he owned the Liverpool Boxing Stadium, which was the first purpose-built stadium in the country. Gets drafted, stationed out in India, where he meets Mo. And they fall in love and have their two little boys, Pete and Rory. Also born in India. Pete was Madras, Rory in Bombay, which is now Mumbai. But the war finishes. Mo and the boys are going to move back to England with Johnny. And they move into Ellersby Manor, best family home at the time. Huge manor house. This was like a proper Downton Abbey type thing. You know, dwarfed this house, made it look tiny. And everybody lived there. It was Johnny's parents, his brothers and sisters, all the grandkids, and Mo's knocking heads with John's sisters. They're saying she's lazy and trying to skip out to doing chores and housework. And what's happening? Mo's still got near enough ankle length hair from out in India. It's 35, 40 degrees in India. If she washes her hair or goes for a swim in the sea, it's dry 10 minutes later just walking down the street. And on a good day, we are not a tropical country. You know, washing her hair here, she's splaying it out over 2 or 3 chairs and having to sit in front of a fire for an hour and a half to dry her hair out. Doesn't own a hairdryer yet. They've only been invented like 15 years prior. They're still a luxury. You know, when she eventually cuts it into a bob, the damage is done. Look, Johnny, I don't want to live here. Don't get on with your sisters. We need our own house to raise our own family. It's okay, Mo. No qualms with that. So off she goes looking for houses. And being the character that she was, she's not taking Johnny to see your 2 up, 2 down, semi-detached houses like you see all over the city. She's taking them to old converted lighthouses, windmills, fire stations, barns, stables, water towers. It's all the weird, wacky, wonderful places. And Johnny's just, no, Mo, these are great. This is not what we discussed. Just find us a house, which has gone on over a period of years. And Pete and Rory are getting to young teenagers. Uncle Rory, he was attending a school that used to be on this street at the far end called Marlborough College. It's not there anymore. The headmaster burnt it down and eloped with the insurance money, but that's another story for another time. And Rory's walking home from school one day, sees this house for sale, brings Mo to see it, and she falls in love. This is the one. She's got a heart set on it. Brings Johnny to see it. Another no. He's saying it's a big white elephant, Mo, black hole for money. It's going to cost loads to restore, even more to maintain. There's no chance. We're not having the house. And by now, Mo's had enough of being told what she can and can't do. Goes, pawns all her jewellery, straight down to the local bookies, and bets it all on a horse called Never Say Die. Named rather appropriately. Being rode by Lester Piggott. Any of you are into your horse racing, Lester goes on to become a world-renowned jockey. But this stage in his career, you know, he's a young man, bit of an unknown. He's still like, up and coming through the ranks. It's his first big race, the 1954 Derby. Little bit of an outsider, running 33-1, and he wins.
Yeah.
She goes, gets all her jewellery back, comes and buys the house. £500 it cost her. A lot of money back then. The metric system totally different. Still shillings, bobs, penny farthings, half pennies. You know, Johnny gets in from work and she's waiting for him, all elated with herself. You know, and tells him what she's done. He hits the roof. He's, Jesus, Mo, you could have lost everything. I told you we weren't having the house. It's all the things we could have done with that money. And she's, I don't care. It's my stuff. If I've lost, it's only me who lost anything, and I've won. It's my money. I've bought the house. It's my house. I'm going to live there. And I'm taking Pete and Rory with me. You know where we are if you change your mind. They have a little standoff for a couple of weeks until one day there's a knock on the door. Mo opens the door. There's Johnny with all the suitcases. And he's in. Yeah, always was a clever man. But that's how they got the house. And as you go in the first room, there'll be a painting of a spider with CCC on the wall that was painted by Pete. And now it's 1959. They've been in the house a couple of years, and Pete and Rory are mid and late teenagers with a huge gang of friends. There's two different groups. When they're all together, there's 35, 40 of them. Mo's got the big house. Everyone hangs out here all the time. Getting fed up of it. You know what, boys, tonight no friends round. We'll just have dinner as a family. We will watch some telly afterwards as a family. It's okay, Mo, that's fine. Never won an argument with Mo anyway. You always just agreed with whatever she wanted to do. Made your life so much easier. Plus, everybody had to call him Mo. It was never Mum, Nan, Auntie, Grandma, Mrs. Best, Mona. Worst than all the above. You know, everybody had to call him Mo. But I digress. That night they're showing a documentary on the Two Eyes Coffee Bar up in London. It's billed as the birthplace of British rock and roll. Showing the bands there, seen around the club, acts that have came from there, what they're doing now. You know, Tony Sheridan, Cliff Richard, The Shadows. It finishes, Mo turns to Johnny and she's, that was fantastic. Does Liverpool have anything like that? Any rock and roll clubs or coffee bars? And Johnny's, no, Mo. There's nothing like that at all in the city. Everything was still skiffle groups and jazz clubs at the time. Even the Cavern had a strict jazz-only policy. And Mo's, well, I've had a great idea. You know, we'll turn the basement of the house into a rock and roll club. Kill two birds with one stone. And Johnny is, what are you talking about, Mo? She's, well, it's going to give the boys all somewhere to hang out. They're not in and out of the house all day long. Gives me something to do at the same time. I'm going a bit stir crazy just being a housewife. I will manage the club. Johnny is over my dead body, Mo. There is no way. We are not having a rock and roll club underneath our house. As you can all see, he lost that argument. The work started the very next day. Johnny leaves for the stadium and Mo tells Pete and Rory, go get all your friends round, tell them to start cleaning out the basement. Amongst the friends, a chap called Ken Brown. Looking like a very Buddy Holly-like character in his youth. He was working in a lumber yard at the time. There's all bits of wood and offcuts of cladding that you'll see. They all came from Kent. They're letting them just take the leftover timber at the end of jobs. And the club's underway. But you need a band. Can't have a rock and roll club without a band. And Mo asks another one of their friends, Ruth Morrison. Sort of becomes the club's rock and roll aficionado. Ruth, she's got loads of friends in the different bands, always at the different gigs. Who does she think is the best band in the city? Who should they have as the resident band for the club? Ruth's saying to Mo, that's not even a question. You know, hands down, best band in the city. It's the Les Stewart Quartet. I know what you're all thinking. How rock and roll of them, the quartet. You can see them now, can't you? Outside the barber shop, the steel drum, fire going, so rock and roll. You know, and Mo says to Ruth, do you know anyone who plays for them? She's, yeah. So do you, Mo. Ken Brown plays for them. She's over to Ken, propositions him, and he's made up. Who wouldn't be? It's the only rock and roll club in the city. You're going to be the resident band. And he gets everyone to Les's that night and puts it to the other boys. Les Stewart makes a decision that changes the course of history. I'm not doing it. I don't like Pete best, don't like Rory best, and I don't like their friends. There's a huge gang of them. They're always marauding around the village, and their mother, it's worse than them. Kind of shocked. He's, well, Pete and Rory are my friends. You know, the big group of boys and girls you're talking about hanging around the village. I'm one of them. I like Mo. I'm going to go and play a club anyway. Does anyone want to come with me? And the lead guitarist, who was Ruth's boyfriend at the time, so I'm sure there was no bias, guys, whatsoever as to why she thought they were the best band. Yeah, but the lead guitarist, yeah, I'll come with you, Ken. And that was George Harrison. Let me come and see Mo, tell her what's happened, don't worry. We've had a light bulb moment, you know, we're going to open, play your club as a duet. Very proud of themselves with this idea. She's, no, you're bloody not, Ken. You promised me a band. I want a band. He's assuring Mo, look, that many friends who are musicians, the new band that will be put together by tomorrow, Mo, you've got nothing to worry about. And she's, Okay, I'll see you all tomorrow then. Leave, get to the end of the path. Ken turns to George. I was lying through my back teeth to Mo. I don't know anyone. Do you know anyone? I've got a few friends who can play. I can ask around and see if anyone wants to join a band with us. So they come back to see Mo the next day as Ken Brown, George Harrison, John Lennon and Paul McCartney. As you do when you've got a few friends who can play. You just casually bring John and Paul. Ken, he's already had a whisper in everyone's ear. Told them what they're going to have to say to Mo. So when she's asking them, well, what type of music are you going to be playing, boys? They're saying, oh Mo, we're going to do Elvis, Gene Vincent, Chuck Berry, Buddy Holly, all the American rock and roll. She's like, you're reading me mind, boys. It's all the stuff I listen to. Great, you've got the gig. What are you going to call your band? Which is when John turns round and says, I used to have a band when I was younger. We're not together anymore. We'll just use my old band name. Call ourselves the Quarrymen. I like it. Sounds good. As long as you're all here. No point just standing round, boys. Yours a hammer, nails, paint, brushes. Go get stuck in. You can all help get the club ready. The second room you'll go into, you'll see an Aztec ceiling that was painted by John. Had 3 attempts painting that ceiling. First attempt, he does like the 3-toe, pot-bellied, scrawny-legged figures like you see in all his drawings and doodles. Mo hated them, thought they were hideous. Not staying on me ceiling, John, they're going to have to go. He's okay, Mo. Attempt number 2, paints the ceiling green. Comes downstairs, sees the green ceiling, even worse than the figures. Might have been born and grown up out in India, but still from an Irish family. She was a very superstitious woman. No green in the house, it's bad luck. I don't know what possessed you, John, that's not staying up there. Mo, please. It's my 3rd time. Just tell me what you want. I will paint it for you. She's okay, John. Well then how about something a bit Mexican? Something a bit Aztec? So, like I said, in the second room you will see John Lennon's interpretation of Mexican Aztec artwork. Mo also caught him in that room carving his name into the wall. It's by one of the speakers on the right hand side. You'll be able to go and find that one. She was not happy, got a couple of smacks over the back of the head and sent to help somebody else in another room if he'd finished. The room after that, you'll see a little cubby at the end with a rainbow ceiling. That little cubby was the original stage for the club. Was only the stage for about a month and a half, but we'll get to that in a minute. And the rainbow on the ceiling was painted by Paul, and that little cubby was where what would go on to form the front lineup of the Beatles were ever first paid to perform. There's a big photograph at the end of it as well, of the boys playing the opening night, 29th of August 1959, and the photograph is the earliest known photograph of the same again, what would go on to form the front lineup, actually performing together. There's earlier ones where it's just John and Paul or a Village Fate, or all 3 sort of milling around in a dressing room, but it's the earliest known of all 3 actually playing together. They're playing for a few weeks. Mo commissions the local newspaper to come and do a story on the club. The West Derby Reporter. That newspaper, it was the first time any of them were ever in a newspaper, the very first time their names were in print. The photo off the front page, you can see John, Paul and Cynthia all sitting in the room under the rainbow ceiling while they're playing. Paul serenading Cynthia while she stares adoringly back into his eyes. But opening night at the club, Mo was thinking that the club would be a business she'd have to build. But she hadn't realised what she'd done. She's just opened the city's first, and at this point it was the only rock and roll club. So word of mouth has spread and people have come from everywhere. On the opening night, she opens the door, the garden is a sea of people. The driveway's full, queue goes up the street and curtails round into the village. Wow. And she was a very shrewd businesswoman, Mo, which is when she decided it's a members only club. Pay twice now, pay to get your membership and then pay your entrance fee. Yeah. They squeezed between 12 and 1,500 people down there.
On one night?
On one night. There's no health and safety laws or fire regulations, and it's a club for teenagers. They're smaller than adults, and the boys play. They're okay. they're not great at this point. And after a few weeks of playing, a few weeks after the newspaper article even, Ken Brown comes to Mo with terrible stomach cramps and I can't play. She's saying to John, Paul and George, can you do the show without Ken? We can wing it and do the set without Ken. And he goes to leave. She's like, where are you going, Ken? I can't stand up and play, Mo, I'm going home. She said, oh, no, I don't think so. You can't stand up and play, Ken. You can still sit down and work. You did not get away with anything with Mo. She gets a hot water bottle, puts it up his jumper, sits him on a chair out here. You're taking the entrance money tonight, Ken. End of the night, when they go and see Mo and she gives them all the wages, they say, where's Ken's money? Well, I'm going to see Ken at the front, I'll give Ken his money. And no, Mo, it doesn't work like that. Ken didn't play. We get Ken's money to split between the band. And she's saying, no, come on, let's be fair, boys. You know, you're all friends. I know Ken didn't get up and play tonight, but he stayed in work and put the shift in, helped out where he could. You know, he should get his cut of the wages. And the argument comes to a head with the boys saying, no, it doesn't work like that, Mo. You know, Ken didn't play. If we don't get Ken's money to split between the band, we're leaving, taking all of our equipment, and we're never coming back. You all know enough about Mo now to know she was not the type of woman you wanted to give an ultimatum to, and it was the last time they played here as the Quarrymen. But they did come back, and Mo was not worried that they'd walked off in a huff, because over the weeks they had been playing, every rock and roll act in the city had approached Mo and asked her if they could play the club. She's, well, I can't book you. I've got a resident band who plays 7 nights a week, but I'll take your details. So she's amassed a little black book, like a little diary of every rock and roll band in the city. Just goes to that. First one on the list, Rory, Storm and the Hurricanes, with Ringo on drums. When you go into the room, you will see what I'm talking about when I say the problem is, they are a proper band. You've got to remember, the Quarrymen were just 4 teenage boys on guitars. Ringo's drum kit takes up the little cubby on its own, and they've got a proper backline. Amps, mic stands, you know, take up the whole area. It's like a little corridor thing, you know. And the crowd love it. It's a proper band. The music quality is so much better. But Mo's pulling her hair out. She's, what you call all this, boys? You're supposed to fit in the little cubby at the end. That's the stage. You're taking away from me profit, so squeeze another 100 people in here. You know, and she tries again the next week with Derry and the seniors. Howie Casey on sax, who goes on to play in wings for Paul. But it's the same again, the drum kit, the amps, the mic stands, they've got a saxophone player as well. Take up even more room. The crowd love it. Mo's right, so this just isn't working for me. Closes the club for a week, knocks through the room after that, which is now the band room. You get a proper stage in there. There's a spider in the spider web painted on the back wall. It was painted by Pete. The coloured blocks all above the stage were painted by John. There's even a hole in the ceiling of the stage, a nice head print of Rory, Storm and the Hurricanes. Rory Storm was 6'2" and used to like to jump around a lot when he was singing. It's very low in there, do mind your heads when you go in. It's not the best idea jumping around in the Casbah. Mo was less than impressed. As I said, the Quarrymen are now over. They've walked off in their huff and other bands are playing here. Ken Brown has put a new band together by this point, the Blackjacks. Pete's been upstairs practicing on a makeshift kit he's put together, a snare drum, few sets of bongos, pots, pans and cymbals. Says to him, you're actually quite good, Pete, why don't you just get Mo to buy you a proper drum kit and come join my new band as the drummer? So he does. Mo buys him his first kit. Pete joins the Blackjacks, and over the coming weeks their following's growing and growing and growing. And Ken Brown's getting worried. He's noticing in the crowd of Blackjack fans, John, Paul and George. They're watching Pete play and hanging out after the shows and laughing and joking and having a few drinks, and he makes his concerns known to Pete. Saying, look Pete, I know they've got a new band now. I know they're called the Silver Beatles and they need a drummer. You're the best drummer on the circuit. Why else would they be coming to all our shows, watching you play and hanging out with you afterwards, being all pally and Pete, Ken? You're just being paranoid. They're just me friends. You know, I went to school with Paul. We grew up together. I've only just started gigging. They're just me friends coming to watch me play. You know, show some support. They're not interested in me as a drummer. Of course, they asked Pete to be their drummer. Say we've got a professional engagement out in Hamburg. Why not turn pro? Come play professionally with us. He's, well, let me get back to you. He goes and sees Ken and the Blackjacks, tells them the offer. Why don't we turn pro? We're just as good as they are. We could get our own residency. They're all still teenagers, and for Ken and the Blackjacks, it's still more of a fun thing. They're quite happy just playing the Casbah, local churches, social clubs, village fetes, and pulling all the teenage girls. I'd say to Pete, if you want to go and try and make it as a professional musician, go for it, no hard feelings. And Ken Brown would go on, years later, have a #1 hit in his own right with Apple Blossom Time. But Pete goes and joins the Silver Beatles. They jump on a ferry out to Hamburg 2 days later, drop the silver from the name on the boat ride out, arrive in Germany as the Beatles. And as we know, Hamburg is their baptism of fire. They go from playing 30-minute, 40-minute, maybe an hour show here and there. Now they're expected to play 8, 9, 10 hours a night, every single night. But this is what forges them into the great musicians we all know and love. They properly hone their craft out there. Eventually it all comes crashing down. George is found out to be underage. He's only 17. He's deported. Uncle Pete and Paul, they're both arrested for allegedly guys trying to burn down the Bambino cinema with condoms, and they're both deported. Stu Sutcliffe's fallen in love. Astrid Kershaw not coming home. He's going to do Christmas, New Year out there with her, and develops a brain tumour, sadly never does come home. And John, he joins Tony Sheridan's band for a few weeks. No one ever really talks about that, but he stays out there gigging for a bit, not the same without his friends, and then comes home as well. And back in Liverpool, the band's over, it's done. Everyone's come home in bits and pieces. Pete's already back here, he's working on the bar. George is an apprentice electrician. Paul's working on a fruit and vegetable cart, doing door-to-door deliveries with fruit and vegetables. Stu's still abroad, and John's being John, sitting around smoking and writing #1 hit singles like we all do in our spare time. I wish. Pete goes to Mo, look, we got really, really good out in Hamburg. If we can get the band back together, can we have a spot in the club? Of course you can, son. Get your band back together. You can play Saturday night. They get back together, but need a stand-in for Stu. He's still in Germany. Paul hasn't gone on to bass yet. So they asked Chaz Newby, who was the bass player for the Blackjacks. He's also the most recent bass player for the lineup of the Quarrymen. Now, recently passed about 3 weeks, a month ago now, Chaz, sadly. But they ask him to stand in, and he says, yeah, I'll do you a favour, lads. Plays 5 shows with the Beatles over that Christmas. By all accounts of the time, back in his heyday, sang just like Paul. He played left-handed bass just like Paul. He was actually asked by Paul after his short stint with the Beatles if he wanted to become a permanent member of the band. As I'm sure you can all guess, he said no. He didn't see a future in it. What a regret to have, but what a claim to have at the time. We have just lost the only man in the world who could have ever said he turned down the Beatles. Well, you've got your band back together, you're standing for Stu. The posters go up in the club, the fabulous Beatles direct from Hamburg, Germany. And the Casbah crowd are ecstatic. They think they've gone international. They think there's a German rock group coming to play the Casbah. Until Saturday night arrives, and in come John, Paul and George, and everyone's... That's the Quarrymen, they're not German. And then Chaz comes in with his bass, jumps up on stage, and the whispers are getting a little bit louder. Everyone's, but that's Chaz from the Blackjacks, and he's not German. Pete comes downstairs, gets on the drum kit. There's uproar. That's Pete. He lives here. Definitely not German. They're all over to Mo. Where's the German group? We want our money back. Very clever marketing from Mo at the time, saying I never said they were a German group. What my posters say is that they are direct from Hamburg, Germany, which they are. They haven't played anywhere else. So go in and watch the band. So the Beatles, their very first time ever playing anywhere other than Germany, the UK, England, their hometown, as the Beatles, was 17th of December 1960, right here, to a crowd that is not happy to see them. They want their German rock group. The Beatles start playing and just turn those frowns upside down. No one's seen much of anything like it. all the other bands of the era, they're still trying to emulate the Shadows. You know, it's nice neat comb-overs, very well groomed, the skinny suit and tie with all the clinky plonk guitar and your little two-step dance routines behind the lead singer. This is not the Beatles, the teddy boy quiffs, the head to toe in leather, cowboy boots, bit dishevelled, the jumping all over the stage. They're giving them proper, gritty rock and roll. They've just come home from entertaining sailors and prostitutes for months in one of the biggest red light districts on the planet, you know, the biggest in Europe. Entertaining the local teenagers, that's an easy show. And now you've got a 10-hour spot condensed down into a 1-hour gig. All your best songs. You just take the roof off the place they're following. Explodes overnight. And what starts to happen, because if you're in or around the club, you can hear them. If you're not in the band room, you can't see them. And everyone wants to see them, so people are squeezing in round the doorway and everyone's getting shuffled forward until the inevitable. They're getting hit with microphones, drums and cymbals, getting knocked over. Having nights where they're standing against the back wall of the stage with the crowd a foot in front of them, and they go to Mo and say, "You're going to have to do something, Mo, this is getting ridiculous." So at the front of the stage you will see an old set of garden railings that was put up by Mo to keep the crowd back. So essentially what that is, it's the Beatles' very first crowd control. It is a bit of a far cry from 50 armed police officers when you see it, but it was a club for teenagers. You know, there's no alcohol down here back then. It's soft drinks, tea, coffee, Coke, Fanta. But Mo would keep beers upstairs in the green room for the bands. Their first gig, it's gone down a storm and the club are emptying out. Mo's taking the boys upstairs. Yo, let's go have a proper beer, celebrate. John hangs back, has a little look around the club, make sure the coast is clear. He hasn't forgotten about getting a smack off Mo for carving his name in one of the rooms before he went to Germany. And he's back at it again. So there's a red square in the far left-hand corner of the stage. Left hand if you're looking at it, right hand if you're standing on it. It's got "John, I'm back" carved into the ceiling, which Mo did not spot for a couple of weeks, but when she did, went spare. Yo, he gets grabbed by the scruff of the neck, frog marched into the band room, read the riot act with the ceremonial few smacks over the back of the head, and "Empty your pockets out, John." Okay, Mo, to empty all his pockets out, and she confiscates a little pale-handled penknife, which he begged to fall back. "Oh, it's a tool, and I use it to tune me guitar, cut me guitar strings." And she's, "No, you do not, John. Every time I catch you with it, you're carving your name somewhere else in me club." You know, went on her house keys. He never did get his penknife back. Stayed there until the day she passed. It's in the museum in town now. But there's a corridor just behind this door here. As you're going round the club, it leads you into a little corridor with a silver dragon painted along it. That corridor, the door at the end, comes out here into the courtyard, and that was the original entranceway for the club. But it was only the entrance for about a month and a half, and then when they swapped the band room, the stage, from the little cubby into the proper stage, they switched entrances because they weren't expecting there to be so many people. That one's a little bit wider. You know, but Mo used to rub the dragon coming in and out of the club for good luck. And then the boys are asking her why she's doing that, and she's telling them all about these Eastern philosophies and the lucky dragon, because apparently a dragon in the doorway of your home or your business wards away evil spirits and brings good fortune. So I think it worked. Yeah, she's rubbing it, and then the boys are asking her why, and they're rubbing it. And then the other bands start doing it because the Beatles do it, and all the members start doing it because all the bands do it. So when you're in there, you're more than welcome to give the dragon a rub for good luck. She's been bringing a lot of people a lot of luck for a long, long time, and you can never have too much good luck. But in 2011, Liverpool and Memphis were twinned together. The twinning of the cities, rock and soulmates, and in the pairing of attractions, the Casbah was paired with Sun Studios because Johnny Cash, Elvis, Roy Orbison, and many others started there, and the Beatles started here. But it was around that time the city of Liverpool gave Pete his own street sign. Fifth Beatle to be honoured by the city with a sign. I think the only one without one now is Stu Sutcliffe, but while they gave Pete his own sign, they graciously chose to name a street after the Casbah. So last time I checked, to the best of my knowledge, we are the only rock and roll club in the world with a street named after us, which is quite an achievement. I suppose even as, when or if there is another, we'll always be the first. Another first for the Casbah. But the bar, which is the last room in the club, before I all let you go in, do you wonder? The stars on the ceiling in there were painted by all the boys. John, Paul, George, Pete, Stu, and my grandfather, because my dad's got a different dad to Pete and Rory. My dad's 20 years younger, and I'm sure you'll all know who my grandfather is, but if not, I shall tell you more about him later. And at first, they were cutting the stars out and sticking them on the ceiling, trying to create like a two-tiered effect. It's a basement, you know, it's cold, it's damp, they're not sticking properly, they're peeling off and falling down, and in the end, Mo goes, boys, you've been at it all day, just paint the stars on the ceiling, and they begrudgingly paint them on. When you're in there looking at them, you can see the glue marks and stuff on them from where they were trying to stick them up at first. There's a silhouette above the fireplace in the bar as well. That silhouette was painted by Cynthia Lennon, or the then Cynthia Powell. And the way that came about, all the posters for the club were always just handmade by the friends and family. Scraps of paper, the back of an old movie poster, just using like stencils and bits of paint normally. It's post-World War II. Liverpool got quite heavily bombed. People didn't have a lot. They're just using what they've got lying around the house. And one week, Mike McCartney, Paul's brother, says, can I do the poster for them this week, Mo? She said, of course you can, Michael. So there's a picture and a poster in there, you'll see. And Michael takes a picture of John, turns it into a poster that you'll see. And then after the shows that week, Cynthia takes the poster down and asks Mo if she could paint the silhouette above the fire. And she says, well, of course you can, Cynthia. So you'll see from picture to poster to painting. The house, though, it gets to the point where it can't sustain the amount of people who are coming to see the Beatles on a regular basis. It is just a house in a residential area, you know. Mo starts Casbah promotions and she's moving them around different dance halls through the city, and they outgrow those as well, and she decides they need a second residency somewhere in the city centre. People can head there a few nights a week, see them there as well. Alleviates some of the pressure from the house. Does a research and makes a few phone calls, and she thinks she's found the place. The Cavern. Rings up Ray McFall, who, if any of you have seen the Best of the Beatles documentary, Ray, by his own admission, says the first time he'd ever even heard of the Beatles was when Mo Best rang him. She's saying, Ray, me resident band are selling out the club 7 nights a week, they're selling out the dance hall shows, second residency, your place, etc, etc. It's all the good stuff. Everything you're saying to me sounds great, Mo. What type of music did he play? She's conveniently left that part out. She's Ray, they're an absolutely fabulous rock and roll band, and he's, Mo, clearly no one's told you, the Cavern has a strict jazz-only policy. It was still a jazz club, this was still the only rock and roll club in the city. To which, in the same documentary, Ray said he was a bit taken back at that point. He'd never been spoken to so forthright by a woman before. And she said she did understand it was a jazz-only club, and also understood that Monday to Friday the club was empty. Lucky if he had 10 people in over the weekend, how long was he going to stay open for like that? Taken back, let me get back to you, and goes and speaks to his MC, Bob Wooler. You heard of this band, the Beatles. Is it worth taking a chance on a rock band? This is how Mo heard about the Cavern, to be fair, because Bob Wooler's now in a position where he can't really turn round to Ray and go, right, actually, Ray, I've been moonlighting. I've been working for Mo for about a year behind your back, emceeing all the dance hall shows for her. You know, put a cash in hand off the taxman's book. So he's having to give Ray the old, the Beatles, you said? Oh yeah, I've heard of them. They're supposed to be. Oh, look at the hurt, Ray. It's only one show. Yeah, Ray rings back. They get the gig at the Cavern. Like everywhere else, sellout show. Queues down Matthew Street. Ray lands up, goes in the dressing room, and there's the boys, head to toe in leather. So, lads, we are due to go on soon. When are we? I'm getting dressed. We're ready, Ray. We'll go on now if you need us to. So, no, boys, I don't think so. This is a reputable establishment. I hold my acts to a certain standard. Everyone who plays my stage, they have to wear a suit. And there's a big argument over that, where John tells him to go and do one, in the most PG way possible, being John. Storms off out the dressing room over to Bob Wooler, cancel the show. Bob's right. You've seen the club. The queue outside, you'll cause a riot. You cancel this show 5 minutes before they're due to take the stage. So, back in the dressing room. Look, boys, just do the show, get your wages and leave. You haven't even played yet. I'm already fed up of you. Like everywhere else, they go on, take the roof off the place and raise back in the dressing room after the show. Come here, lads, you can play in your socks and your underpants if that's how you feel comfortable. Cavern becomes a rock and roll club and the Beatles go on to play there 292 times. But for the Cavern to make the very bold claim of where it all began, it's just ridiculous, yo. The band had formed here and been playing here almost 2 years. Near enough 7 nights a week, bar from being away in Hamburg, before they ever played their first gig at the Cavern. But credit where credit's due. It is where Brian sees them. Epstein, Epi for the Scousers, however you like to pronounce it, catches a matinee show, thinks they're great, asks around and he's told Mo's the manager. But when he comes to see Mo, she says, I'm not the manager. There's no contract, don't take any money. Just Pete's mum, one of the parents from the band helping out. He starts to give her the sales pitch. Let me stop you there, Brian. As far as shows are concerned, they're performing between 2 and 4 a day now, as it is. What are you going to do for the boys that they can't do for themselves that warrants you taking a percentage of their wage? What swings it for Brian? He promises Mo he's going to get them a British recording contract. And she's okay, Brian, prove to me you're a man of your word. I will show you I'm a woman of mine. You can take the Beatles with my blessing. He comes back about 2.5 weeks later. He's got them their audition for Decca. And Mo, true to her word, got an audition. You were recording that session. You remember, George? You remember?
Yeah.
No, you were later. You were Abbey Road, right? No, but yeah, he's got them their audition for Decca, and Mo, true to her word, hands them over with her blessing. But 1962, when they go to see George, Pete's time with the band comes to an end. They go up to Abbey Road to record and they're told we're going to use our session drummer to lay down the drum tracks. And this is where it all falls down and what spawns all the rumours, because everyone always forgets that they're still just teenage boys at this point. And this is what, their 3rd, 4th shot at a record deal. It's their last. Everyone else has already turned them down. Brian's not a band manager. It's his first time ever managing a band. He used to run a record store in the city centre. So as the recording side of the industry works, he's still very green, he's very new to it all. And there's no internet or anything back then. Information levels now and then are totally different. It's quite common knowledge now that recording studios will bring in session musicians. It makes it more cost effective. But when the boys are told this, they panic and they take it as Pete's not good enough and Brian's a bit too green to calm the situation and go, a lot of places record like that, boys. Let's just get the recording done and we'll be on tour in a couple of weeks, don't worry about it. But we get home, sack Pete, hire Ringo, back up to Abbey Road to be told it's nothing to do with the drumming, boys, it's the way we want to record it. And they champion Ringo, so he gets to have a go and he finishes and they say, no, we're still doing it our way. And they bring in Andy White to lay down the drum tracks, which is why there's 3 versions of Love Me Do. Pete's, Ringo's, Andy White's, and Andy White finishes off the rest of the session. They never ever changed the B-side actually. So the B-side's Please Please Me, still Pete drumming. They never actually changed the B-side, but hey ho, this gives birth to all the rumours. Was he not good enough? Was he too good looking? Did they get jealous? Did he not want to wear the suits and not get the Beatle haircut? And I've heard them all. You're just talking about teenage boys panicking over their last shot at a record deal and a manager who doesn't know any better at the time, and they just make an honest mistake, but you've made it now, so you've just got to go and get on with it. And even though Pete's time with the band comes to an end, the family's time doesn't, because my grandfather was the roadie, then the road manager, and then ran Apple as the managing director from the day they started their own company for 40 years, right up until the day he passed. Neil Aspinall, which is my grandfather. So because of Pete, Mo, my granddad, my dad ended up with, I think it's the 2nd largest Beatles memorabilia collection in the world. The only one that's bigger than my dad's is Paul McCartney's, and you Can't go and have a look at Paul's. This is why my dad and Pete opened the museum on Matthew Street to start displaying it, because it was just sat in lockups for years gathering dust, you know. Some of the things in there, the boomerangs, you know, the painted boomerangs, you see them gifted or posing with them out in Australia, you know. Got those in there, geese from getting off the plane in Japan, and matador hats with them messing about on the shoot in Spain. My granddad was on set with John filming How I Won the War. One of the army suits comes home from filming. You know, the medals that John's wearing on the Sergeant Pepper album cover and all the promo shoots. They've got those in there with the little trophy off the front of the album cover. I could go on forever and a day with little side stories and tidbits, but to finish off, the very last thing before I let you go and do your wonder, because you can't get a better endorsement than from the main man himself. So the same documentary I mentioned earlier, The Best of the Beatles, where Ray was speaking about Mo, Paul was in it, and they started asking Paul about the club, and he turned around and said, I think it's a good idea to let people know about the Casbah, because they know about the Cavern and know about some of those things. But the Casbah was the place where all that started. We helped paint it and stuff. We looked upon it as our personal club. Sir Paul McCartney, there's a book on the inside that's got the quote in. But yeah, I said, you can't really get a better endorsement than that, can you? The man himself saying this is where it started. We painted it. It was our personal club. You know, so that is sort of the story of the Casbah in a nutshell, or as much of one I can squeeze it into for you in an hour. But I hope you all enjoyed it. And we'll have a proper wander around. Go have a look at the club, guys. Thank you.
Great story. Thank you.
I'll turn the music on and have at it, guys. Go have a proper wander around the club.